Okay, hello. Welcome back to another Professor of Thrones podcast. Well, I've been seeing a lot of people saying this was pretty much a status quo episode, like pretty much the same as the past couple, but I think that makes sense from a non book reader perspective, but from a book reader perspective, this was probably the worst episode of the show so far. Other than the very last scene, all of it was entirely made up, I believe. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't think anything in this episode actually happened in the book. And it's absolutely insane to me that this is the episode we're getting when we have so little of the show left. We have one more episode of the season. This was the penultimate episode, which is usually like a big one. We have one more episode of this season. Then we have 8 episodes left of the entire show. And by God, are we. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know how they're possible unless they're. What I think they're doing is they might just be doing an entirely original story from this point on, which is psychotic given that the book is done and exists and is there for them to adapt and is written by George R. R. Martin, one of the, if not the greatest writers of all time. And they could just take his story and just do it and it would be incredible. But if they try to do the beats from the book, I don't know how they're going to fit them all in. Like, where are they going to end the show? Like, I'm just trying to think of possible ending points for the show, and I don't even think they're going to fit what I would say is like the earliest possible ending point. And this isn't me not giving any spoilers, but like the earliest possible point they could end it while still making satisfying. I don't even know if they're going to be able to get to in this few episodes, especially if they're going at this such a sluggish pace. Like, essentially what I think is going to happen next episode is what I thought was going to happen at like the mid-season point of this season. And I'm just gonna say something to that book readers will understand. It made so much sense for them to end this season with the Dragon Pit, like pacing wise, like that would have made complete sense for the story and left like, okay, you could probably finish the rest of the story in the next 8 episodes next season. But to ending with first Templeton, and it's like I really don't know where the story's going from here. I genuinely think they might not be adapting the book anymore. Anyway, let this was a rough one. Let's dive into the episode proper here. Okay, so let's go into the Reyna and Nettle stuff to start. What a mess that whole sequence was. Like, they essentially, it almost feels like they realize they messed up and we're like, oh, this story's going nowhere and it makes no sense in the context, and like, let's just try to wrap it up. It gave the sense of that whole sequence, gave the sense of like, we just need to wrap up this plot, like make it so it never happened. And that's crazy to me because they could have just adapted Nettles, the character from the book that's great and had a very interesting story, and then gave Reyna the story she had in the book as a separate character. Like, now, I wonder if they're going to try to renege on what they did essentially and just have Reyna continue her story from the book as if nothing happened. I don't think they can really do that, but it seems like everyone's kind of in a place where they're willing to forgive Reyna, and like, so maybe it will go back to status quo. Like, I really have no idea what they're doing here. But then also, very before that sequence, they introduced that there's now an Adam Allen Bela love triangle going on. Like that, I don't begrudge that much because the way the book's told, it could be something that's happening off page. Like it's not changing the book; it's just adding to it, which I'm always fine with that, where it's adding to things that might have happened off screen or like extrapolating on things like where it was happening when the character was off page. I'm fine with those changes, but it feels a little dumb to be introducing artificial conflict between these brothers that are like very aligned and very like have a solid foundational relationship in the book that are now just going to be torn apart over like this romance. Probably, I don't know. um it's yeah. So let's go over to Harrenhal, the whole Allison Helena stuff. It feels so weird, not just because it's weird, like because it's incredibly weird and uncomfortable, but also because it's entirely made up for the show. Um, Allison never leaves King's Landing at this point in the story in the book. They just made her go there. Like, what was the point of this plot? Because now Allison goes, thinks she poisoned Aemon, leaves, and now Alice Rivers is going to heal Aemon, and we're back to square one. Like, that never needed to happen. It was just a waste of screen time. And why are we wasting screen time when we have so few episodes left and so much of the story to get through? Like, we are 3/4 of the way through the show, less actually, if you actually counted up the episodes, and we have about like I want to say like 40% of the story left to go. like that's like where we're at right now, and I'm like, that's crazy to me. That's where we're sitting right now. We're making up shit to fill time. It really, like, to circle back, it really does lead me to think that they're going to make up their own story. Like, at this point, like, maybe they'll have some of the key set pieces, like I don't want to spoil anything. You know what the key set pieces are of the story, but they'll be so different contextually. Like, I really don't know what's going on. This episode, like, episode 1 had me worried. This episode kind of was like, okay, like, I don't really know if this show is gonna stick the landing or not. I'm pretty concerned. I'll say that. But yeah, the whole Harrenhal sequence was very uncomfortable for both of those reasons, both the material and that, like, yeah. Um so moving over to Aegon, yeah, I knew it seemed like Sunfire was going to be alive. They never, like, it wasn't, it was, it's interesting because when we saw it in in that episode, we saw it, it wasn't like decomposed. It was kind of just like almost comatose. And it's interesting now because we saw it on and it might have been the lighting because of the night sequence, but it almost looked like zombified. Like, it was part decomposing and still alive, and almost reminiscent, like, if you actually read Fire and Blood, like, it almost reminded me of like how I imagine Balerion being after the whole Arya Targaryen situation with it was Arya, right? Araya, however you pronounce it. I think, yeah. Where the whole, like, flight to the ruins of Valeria thing, that whole sequence, from one of the best sequences in Fire and Blood. If you haven't read it, I mean, if you're watching the show this far and haven't read it, you're probably never going to read it. But it's a really good book. But yeah, it almost gave me imagery of that. And yeah, it seems like they're circling Aegon back to where his, like it's weird that this thread, it seems like they're circling him back to where his book plot is going to continue, and you could see his sort of shift into, like, okay, I was down in the shit, but I have my dragon back, I have my pride back. Like, his maniacal laughing at the end shows, it's like, it's almost like, I didn't learn my lesson and gonna be good now. I learned my lesson in that no one can keep me down and I can do what I want, and that's it's a little nerve wracking. You can see those cracks forming again. What was going on with Larys? Like, what is his deal? I have a feeling he's probably, this is probably all part of his scheme, and he's, little fingering his way through, and he's off screen going to set something up right now. He's probably always going to dip at this point and go do something. That's my theory, if, like, they keep with Larys being this, like, mastermind like he was in season 1 or first half of 2, because they haven't really been showing that side of him. But I also feel like he probably has, like, a whole spy network that we're not really seeing, and he has a lot of machinations going on. So I'm interested to see what they do with Larry's for him to, like, dip like that, but yeah, I called that they wouldn't kill the dragon. There's a very big, important, one of the most iconic scenes in the entire story would be in season 4 and revolves around Aegon's dragon Sunfire. So that, they can really have it killed and keep the same story. So moving back to Rhaenyra and King's Landing, it seems like she's getting, like, fully she's getting fully like corrupted. Like I don't know if corrupted is the right word, but like disassociated and ego tripping on her own identity and power and like divine chosenness, you know, and so she stopped listening to small folk altogether. She stopped paying musicians altogether. She's completely siloed herself and cut herself off from the people, and that is disastrous for a ruler. You know, it like it completely. If you publicly say you're not going to listen to any of your subjects, you know, that's like your reputation shattered. I don't think she cares anymore. I think she just like got overwhelmed, shut down, and was like, no, it's done. I don't have a connection to the people anymore. I am in my own bubble. And that Mysaria Sylvie combo was interesting because like I read it as Mysaria actually like Sylvie was like, you've changed, you're not the same anymore. Like, but I actually read it more like I actually read Mysaria trying to do the right thing. Like she was being manipulative and conniving, but she was doing it for a good reason. You know, like she was like, okay, I'll unofficially serve as a liaison between the small folk and the queen. Like I know her, I can read her moods and vibes and everything. I know when to broach certain things and not. So come to me with your issues and I'll relay them to her in a more delicate manner instead of bombarding and overloading her while she's in the throne room. And I understand where Sylvie's coming from, where she's just saying, like, you know, like you're like curtailing to the royalty when you were always a champion for the people. Now you're like kind of like her lapdog essentially, and I understand that point. But I feel like Mysaria is still trying to do good for the people. Like so, I don't know how I feel with that conversation. It's an interesting moral dilemma there. I actually like that sequence. If you don't remember who Sylvia is, she is like she was the prostitute that Eamon was going to see in season one, I think early season two, but yeah, and she was the one actually like was kind of stirring shit with Ulf to try to like get him to start doing it. So she's like, I don't want to spoil anything from the book, but like, she is definitely a player. Like she's, if they go by what they did in the book, like she's, you know, she's not going away, is what I'll say. So yeah, but yeah, of course we get the, you know, the rekindling of the romantic connection between Rhaenyra and Mysaria there. It was definitely like I can definitely sense it was Mysaria trying to let Rhaenyra's guard down and like sort of appeal to her ego trip to sort of get under into her graces, you know, and try to, you know, push the mission she was pushing before. So let's move over to Helena finally. She appears very sickly. Like I don't know if it's because she stopped eating and drinking entirely and lied to Allison about that. That could be, but there's something. I wonder if it's the dreams are like draining her and that she's not even able to sleep. Like almost like it reminds me of Darren the Drunkard from, you know, Duncan Egg Knight of Seven Kingdoms. Like his situation where he was so like bombarded by dreams that he just became an alcoholic. Like it kind of gives that energy. You know, obviously Helena's no alcoholic, but she's clearly deteriorating rapidly. Like you can physically see it, and it's just so fucked up again from Rhaenyra. She just doesn't even acknowledge that. But I thought she was going to say something like, "Why do you look like this?" or something, but she didn't even mention it, if I remember correctly, and that's crazy to me. But to go into the dream specifically, they were very like, you know, they were very simple, I guess is the word. They weren't very like complex or like representative of future like events that much. Like, you know, she gives birth and then the baby's taken away. Obviously that's her fear and her concern. She wants like, you know, she wants to keep her child. And then there's a scene where she is riding Dreamfire. Finally they acknowledge that she has a dragon that's in the dragon pit and she's opening up the dragon pit. And you know, people are storming in and she's about to burn them. And I feel like that's her fear of, which goes into a second, what will happen if she truly completes or like robusts her bond with her dragon, if you will, like, and she's scared that it will over consume her and make her violent like her siblings. And then you see her on a farm with her child, like peacefully, which is like her ideal life, but it's all taken over and overshadowed by almost look like the eclipse and then a wave of like icy cold air. And I assume that's like she can't abandon her destiny because it's all part of a plan that will eventually stop the White Walkers in the future. And I think that's what that scene was trying to convey. So, but God, I that was a really well captured scene. I think, even though the CG in those sequences were a little like weird and cheesy, but I really captured that feeling of almost like a fever dream, where it's like you're having these like vivid escapist dreams, and then you wake up and you're in this like fucked situation that you're trapped in. It so perfectly really captured that, and I really like that sequence for that reason. Even if there wasn't much substance to the dreams themselves, and of course Rhaenyra, starts off fake friendly and then starts interrogating her, and you can see that like Rhaenyra is totally slipping, like from her situation with the small folk in the other part of the episode to just the way she's just been behaving. It's like she's totally slipping from what she used to be. And Helena makes a very interesting point where she talks about, well, they talk about how Viserys never really connected with his dragon because and then Helena explains that he didn't want it changing him, and that's why Helena doesn't want to do it either, because she doesn't want her bond with the dragon changing her. And that's a very interesting point that I don't think has been discussed in any of the shows so far, and that's, does your psychological bond, your connection, your link, psychic link is what the word I'm going for, with your dragon, does it change your personality in any way? Because we've seen so many Targaryens, the closer they get with their dragon, become more and more, do more and more fucked up things. And like, it's something that, like, honestly, I think is a very interesting point that hasn't really been explored that much in other Song of Ice and Fire media. And it's a good point. There's always the idea that you flip a coin with a Targaryen, whether they're going to be mad or not. But like, has it really been touched upon that much in depth that maybe it's because of how close they are to their dragon or not? We don't know. I think it's a lot because most Targaryens, like, really other than Daenerys in the main series, are historic characters. Most Targaryens that were alive with dragons are historic characters where we don't really get their POV, so we don't really get to see that. And I think that's a very interesting point that the show is question that the show is positing, and I thought that was very interesting to think about. I've been thinking about that a lot since the episode. Anyway, so the ending of the episode, we all saw it coming. Ulf is switching sides. He's going over to oh my god, Ormond Hightower. I couldn't remember his name for a second. We all saw that coming with all of these, and it's like it's so blatant that like Ormond is manipulating Ulf completely. Is not going to give him any of the shit he's talking about. Like, he could give him Driftmark, yeah, right. Like, Ormond is such like an elite, like a highborn elitist. There's no chance he's giving a bastard, and like lowborn bastard, Targaryen bastard, no less, Driftmark. Yeah, sure. If you don't remember, Driftmark's Corlys's castle. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. So now there's another dragon on. Is it really the Green faction side? Because it's almost like this offshoot splinter of the Green faction that's propping up Darren. Like, so I don't, call it what it is, the off green faction, the splinter green faction, whatever you call it. It's interesting because the way the show is handling, and this could have been something that was happening in the book that was not, because of the lack of POV characters, we couldn't really see this, that maybe it was an offshoot splinter in the book and that was George's intention all along. But in the book, it almost feels like they're just there to prop up the core green faction and they're not really like a separate entity, but this could have all very well been happening. And I actually like this shift and change because it complicates things more and it makes them more interesting. So, but yeah, so now this splinter green faction has another dragon, most likely with Ulf. So yeah, the situation gets all the more complex. Rhaenyra losing one of her dragon after she's already at this such a fragile state. We'll just have to see what happened. But yeah, so it seemed like they weren't going to hurt Corlys, but then they cut off his finger and shipped it to Raid. Who they shipped? I can't remember who opened the box in the end of the episode. I totally blanking who did it. Was it Alan? I can't remember. God, sorry. I'm very prepared, as you can tell. But yeah, I guess they were torturing him and removing body parts, or maybe that could have been the only part they removed. Who knows? Or you know what else it could have been? It could have been a fake. It could have been someone else's finger that they put the ring on, and so they didn't actually harm their prime hostage. You know, and maybe they can actually try to win Corliss over if they don't actually harm him. But yeah, so let's touch quickly before we wrap up on how the season is going to end, because what is going to happen next episode, if they're following the books, is something I expected to happen 2 or 3 episodes ago, and I expected them to get to a certain point at the end of the season. That it's crazy to me that they have not reached yet, just because of how much of the story they have left to go. I'm really at the point where I'm thinking they're doing a different story. Maybe they'll hit some of the beats, but other than the ending with Ulf, this episode was I think almost entirely made up from the book, like not in the book. And that, if they're making essentially an entire episode so late in the game with so few episodes left to go, we have 9 episodes of the entire show left after this. If they're doing that, unless they give season 4 10 episodes, which they very well could, and that would give them time to get the ending, but I'm honestly wondering if they're going to do a completely original story from this point on. And you know what? If it's good, it's good. But this episode was a mess. So I don't feel too confident. I just, I hate to be like, you know, for lack of a better term, a book Nazi, where I'm like, oh, it has to be purist to the book. But it really frustrates me when shows or adaptations of any kind make deviations for the sake of making deviations. If it's a deviation that's limited by, okay, we can't really capture this sequence in film, so we have to do something else. Okay, fine, I understand. Or, oh, we're capitalizing on a dynamic that worked really well in a previous season. Like, for example, the change in the dynamic between Alice and Rhaenyra from the book to the show. Like, I think I've talked about this before, but in the book they have a completely different relationship. Alicent is older, and it's almost in like the evil stepmother trope / dynamic, and that's how their character is handled versus childhood best friends / lovers in the show, which I think is a lot better approach. So when they do it like that, where a dynamic is changed and they want to capitalize on that, fine, I support the changes. But really, when it's changes for the sake of changes, when they have a perfectly good story written by one of the greatest writers ever handed to them on a silver platter, then I get frustrated. Anyway, I really don't know where they're going. We'll have to see what happens in the next episode. They have a lot to cover. And I'll keep giving them faith. They've given me a lot of amazing stuff so far, so I just have to hold out hope that they know what they're doing. So yeah, I think that's about it for this one. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.